This woman named Kendra destroyed her perfect marriage with 2 words. 2 words that turned her devoted husband into a stranger. 2 words that cost her everything she'd been too blind to appreciate. And now, 6 months later, she's watching him fall in love with someone else while she sits alone, wondering how it all went so terribly wrong. I'm Emma, and welcome to Mrs. Emma's channel, where we dive deep into real relationship stories that teach us lessons we didn't know we needed to learn. Today's story is about a wife who had everything most women dream of, and threw it away because she couldn't see the gift right in front of her. Meet Kendra, 28 years old, sitting in an empty house that used to be filled with love and laughter. 6 months ago, she thought her marriage was unshakable. Today, she's trying to understand how she became the villain in her own love story. When Kendra first married Austin, she felt like she'd won the lottery. This man adored her in ways that made her friends jealous. Every morning, he'd tell her she was beautiful. Every touch felt intentional. Every glance carried weight. He'd playfully swat her as she walked by in the kitchen, pull her into spontaneous embraces throughout the day, plant kisses on her neck while she stood at the sink. Even the simplest contact would visibly affect him, and at first, Kendra loved every second of it. Her friends would sigh with envy when she'd talk about how Austin still pursued her like they were newlyweds, even after 3 years together. Her friend Sarah would joke, saying she wished her own husband would look up from his phone long enough to notice she existed. Kendra felt proud, almost smug. She had what everyone wanted, a man who couldn't get enough of her. When everything started changing. But then life got complicated. Work pressures mounted. Her mother's health declined. Stress became Kendra's constant companion, and exhaustion settled into her bones. That's when Austin's constant physical attention started feeling different. What once felt like devotion now felt like obligation. Every hug seemed to escalate. Every kiss appeared to lead somewhere. She started wondering if he could simply touch her without his body responding so intensely. She'd notice it everywhere. They'd be watching television, he'd hold her close, and within moments she'd feel him becoming aroused just from her proximity. A quick goodbye kiss in the morning would turn into something more heated as he pulled her tighter. It felt like her mere existence triggered something in him she couldn't control. And honestly, it started making her uncomfortable. Here's the thing that makes this complicated. Austin never pressured her for anything. When his body responded, he'd simply adjust himself and carry on. He never made his arousal her responsibility. But Kendra started feeling trapped, like she couldn't show simple affection without it transforming into something sexual for him. Couldn't she just hug her husband without this automatic physical reaction? Her friends kept asking about Mr. Perfect, making jokes about how Austin must be struggling on days when Kendra wasn't in the mood. They had no clue how irritating it had become to feel like every touch carried this charged energy. She wanted normal affection sometimes, comfort without the undertones of desire. Looking back now, Kendra can see she was building resentment over something that should have made her feel cherished. But in those stressed, overwhelmed moments, it felt suffocating. She started withdrawing slightly, not reciprocating touches as enthusiastically, creating invisible boundaries. Austin didn't pick up on these silent signals. He remained the same affectionate, physically responsive partner he'd always been. Kendra convinced herself he should read her moods better, should instinctively know when she needed pure comfort versus romantic energy. But she never actually communicated this. She just expected him to decode her mind somehow. When he didn't, her frustration grew deeper and deeper. The stage was set for an explosion neither of them saw coming. It happened on a Tuesday evening. Kendra had endured the worst workday imaginable. Everything that could malfunction did. She came home desperate to decompress, maybe zone out in front of the television with her husband beside her. Austin sensed her stress immediately. He'd always been intuitive about her emotions, which she typically appreciated. He prepared dinner without asking intrusive questions, let her vent briefly while they ate. After dinner, she collapsed on the couch, tension radiating from her shoulders. Austin approached and began gently massaging her neck and shoulders. It felt wonderful initially, his hands working out knots she'd been carrying for days. She finally started relaxing, but then he leaned down, kissing her neck softly, his hands caressing her arms tenderly. Within maybe 2 minutes, she felt him pressed against the couch behind her, clearly aroused again. Something inside Kendra snapped. All that accumulated frustration erupted. She spun around and said words she can never take back. "You always sexualize me, and it's disgusting." The words emerged harsher than she'd even intended, but she was so fed up with feeling like she couldn't receive comfort without it turning sexual. Austin stepped back like she'd physically struck him. His expression went completely blank. Silence stretched between them. Then he said quietly, "I can't help being attracted to my wife. I'm a young, healthy man, Kendra. This is normal." But Kendra was too wound up to hear reason. "Just stop," she told him. "It's irritating. I can't even get a normal hug without you getting all worked up. You can't touch me without making everything about sex." Austin looked wounded in a way she'd never witnessed before. "I don't make it about sex," he said quietly. "I just can't control how my body reacts to being close to you. I've never pressured you or made it your problem to handle." He was absolutely right. He never had. But Kendra was too defensive, too frustrated to acknowledge that truth. Instead, she doubled down. "Well, figure it out," she said. "It's gross, and I'm tired of dealing with it." Austin stared at her for a long moment. She could see something shifting in his expression. Not anger exactly, but like he was processing something painful. "Okay," he finally said. "I understand." Then he went to bed without another word. Kendra sat on that couch feeling justified but also nauseated. Deep down, she knew she'd been cruel. Austin had been showing love and desire the only way he knew how, and she'd called it disgusting. But she was too proud to apologize. And honestly, part of her felt relieved that maybe he'd back off now. She had no idea she'd just triggered a chain reaction that would destroy everything beautiful in their marriage. The transformation was immediate and absolute. Austin went from being the most physically affectionate husband imaginable to barely touching her at all. No more spontaneous hugs throughout the day. No more playful touches in the kitchen. No more pulling her close on the couch during movies. He'd accept a quick goodbye kiss in the morning if she initiated it. But there was no lingering, no deepening, nothing that might lead to arousal and disgust her. At first, Kendra felt relieved. Finally, she could exist in her own home without every interaction feeling sexually charged. She could hug her husband without him becoming aroused, could cuddle without his body responding. It seemed like exactly what she'd wanted. But by the end of the first week, something felt wrong. She was washing dishes one evening when Austin walked past to reach the refrigerator. Normally, he would have squeezed her waist or said something flirty or at least acknowledged her. Instead, he simply said, "Excuse me," and went about his business. It felt so formal, like they were roommates instead of married partners. When she tried addressing it, asking why he'd stopped being affectionate, Austin's explanation was maddeningly logical. "You said my physical responses were disgusting," he said calmly. "I don't want to risk becoming aroused and making you uncomfortable again." She argued that it was impossible for him to show affection without getting excited, trying to point out how extreme he was being. But Austin just shrugged. "It happens naturally when I'm close to you. Since I can't control it, the only solution is avoiding situations where it might occur." The worst part was how reasonable he sounded, like he'd analyzed this thoroughly and decided this was the most logical approach to her complaint. But it wasn't what she wanted at all. She'd wanted him to find a way to be affectionate without the sexual response, not to stop being affectionate entirely. "So you're just going to punish me forever because I asked you to tone it down?" she asked one night after he politely declined to cuddle during a movie. "I'm not punishing you," he said without looking at her. "I'm respecting your boundaries. You made it clear my physical responses make you uncomfortable, so I'm ensuring that doesn't happen anymore." She could hear pain in his voice even though he was trying to sound neutral. That's when it hit her that maybe she'd gone too far. But instead of apologizing, she got defensive. Why should she apologize for asking her husband to control himself? Why was she the villain for not wanting to feel sexualized constantly? But the truth was, she was starting to miss feeling desired. She missed how Austin used to look at her like she was the most beautiful woman alive. She missed feeling wanted, attractive, irresistible to her own husband. Now he looked at her the same way he looked at everyone else. Polite, respectful, but without that special spark that used to make her feel chosen. Kendra started trying to initiate more, hoping to reignite that old passion. But Austin would respond just enough to not completely reject her, then pull back before things could intensify. It was like he was keeping himself on a strict leash, and she hated it. 3 months in, she felt more unwanted than ever before in their marriage. She'd dress up hoping Austin would compliment her, but he'd just say she looked nice in the same tone he'd used to comment on the weather. She'd try being flirty or suggestive, but he'd smile politely and change the subject. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd complained about feeling sexualized, and now she felt completely desexualized. Austin was treating her exactly as she'd asked, like someone he could touch without any sexual response, and it was making her miserable. By month 4, Kendra was losing her mind. Austin had transformed into this polite, distant version of himself, and she was panicking that she'd permanently damaged something between them. He still did thoughtful things, still helped around the house, still asked about her day, but it all felt surface level, like he was performing the duties of a good husband without any passion driving those actions. She tried everything to get a reaction. She'd wear his favorite outfits, cook his favorite meals, suggest activities she knew he enjoyed. But Austin had apparently mastered appreciating her without becoming aroused by her. And it was driving her absolutely insane. How was this the same man who used to get turned on just seeing her in his t-shirt? The worst part was his calmness about everything. When she'd get frustrated and demand to know why he was being so distant, he'd explain in that same reasonable tone that he was just being respectful. When she'd point out their physical intimacy had virtually disappeared, he'd remind her that she'd called his natural responses disgusting, so he was trying to avoid that. "But I didn't mean you should shut down completely." She finally exploded one night after he politely declined to shower with her, something that used to be a regular fun activity for them. Austin looked at her with exhausted eyes. "I don't know how to want you the way I used to without my body responding the way it always has. You can't ask me to desire you but not show that desire. So I chose not to put either of us in that position." She wanted to shake him. This wasn't what she'd asked for. She'd wanted him to control his physical responses, not eliminate them entirely by shutting down his desire completely. But every time she tried explaining that, he'd point out that he literally couldn't control those responses. That's simply how male bodies function. Around month 5, Austin had to travel for work, 6 days away. Normally, she would have missed him desperately, and he would have called every night wanting to talk for hours. This time, their conversations were brief and polite. He'd ask about her day, share a little about his meetings, then they'd say goodnight. No flirting, no "I miss you," no talking about how much he looked forward to coming home to her. When he returned, something was different. Not just the same distant politeness he'd been showing for months, but something else. He seemed more thoughtful, more settled somehow, like he'd figured something out while away. Kendra tried welcoming him home the way she used to, with hugs and kisses and excitement about having him back. But Austin responded the same way he'd been responding to everything, politely, briefly, without real enthusiasm. It was like hugging a stranger who was trying to be nice. That's when real panic set in. She'd been telling herself this was temporary, that eventually Austin would get over his hurt feelings and things would return to normal. But looking at him after that trip, she realized this might be who he was now. This polite, distant man who treated her like a roommate he was fond of but not passionate about. She started wondering what happened on his trip. Had he met someone? Had he finally realized he was happier without all her drama? The thought of Austin moving on, finding someone who appreciated his desire instead of calling it disgusting, made her physically ill. But instead of apologizing or trying to fix what she'd broken, she got angry. This was his fault for being so extreme. Normal people would have found middle ground, not shut down completely. He was punishing her. And now he was probably thinking about other women who wouldn't call his attraction disgusting. She had no idea how right she was about that last part, or how much worse things were about to become. 2 days after Austin returned from his business trip, Kendra's world shattered completely. They were having dinner, one of those polite, surface-level conversations they'd been having for months, when Austin suddenly put down his fork and looked at her seriously. "Kendra," he said, "I don't think we're sexually compatible anymore. Maybe we should consider separating." She literally choked on her food. "What?" she managed once she stopped coughing. "Where is this coming from?" Austin was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Our intimacy dropped to almost nothing after you told me my attraction to you was disgusting. I've been thinking about it a lot, especially while I was away. And I don't think this is sustainable for either of us. But that's not what I meant, Kendra said, panic rising in her chest. I just wanted you to tone it down a little, not stop completely. I can't tone down something I can't control, Austin replied. And I can't live in a marriage where my wife finds my desire for her disgusting. It's not fair to either of us. Then he dropped the devastating truth. He told her about his business trip, about one evening after a work dinner when colleagues went to a bar. There was a younger woman there, mid-20s, who had started flirting with him. Nothing inappropriate happened. He was clear about that. But the attention made me realize something. I haven't felt wanted in months, he said quietly. This stranger showed more appreciation for me in one conversation than you have since you called me disgusting. And that's when I realized how unhappy I've become. Kendra felt like she was going to vomit. So, you want to leave me for some random girl at a bar? No, Austin said firmly. I want to leave because I deserve to be with someone who doesn't find my attraction to them revolting. Someone who appreciates being desired instead of calling it gross. Kendra started crying, ugly, desperate tears. I never said you were revolting. I was just stressed and overwhelmed. You're blowing this way out of proportion. But Austin wasn't buying it anymore. You said it was disgusting, Kendra. You said it was irritating and gross. Do you have any idea what that did to me? I spent 3 years thinking I was lucky to have a wife I was so attracted to, and you made me feel like a pervert for wanting my own wife. That's not what I meant, she kept saying, but even as the words came out, she knew how weak they sounded. She had said those things. She had called his desire disgusting. Austin continued, his voice filled with pain. And it's not just that one moment. You never compliment me, never initiate anything, never make me feel like you want me at all. I'm always the one pursuing, always the one showing desire, and you just receive it, until you decided even that was too much. Kendra tried to argue, tried to list ways she showed love, but Austin just shook his head. When's the last time you told me I was attractive? When's the last time you initiated intimacy? When's the last time you made me feel like you actually wanted me and weren't just tolerating my attention? She couldn't answer because he was right. She'd gotten so comfortable being pursued and desired that she'd never bothered reciprocating. She'd taken his constant attention for granted and then complained when it became inconvenient. So what? You're just giving up? She asked, desperation making her voice shrill. You're going to throw away 3 years of marriage because of one fight? This isn't about one fight, Austin said sadly. This is about the fact that you don't want me the way I want you, and you resent me for wanting you at all. That's not a marriage, Kendra. That's me being grateful for scraps of affection from someone who finds my love disgusting. When she asked if he'd cheated with the woman at the bar, Austin looked disappointed. The fact that you immediately assume the worst of me just proves my point, he said. I told you about her because I believe in honesty, not because I did anything wrong. But instead of hearing that I'm unhappy, you're more concerned about whether I betrayed you. That night, Austin slept in the guest room. For the first time, Kendra realized she might actually lose him, not to another woman, but to her own selfishness and inability to appreciate what she had. But even then, even facing the destruction of her marriage, part of her still thought he was overreacting. Part of her still thought this was his fault for being too sensitive about one comment she'd made during a stressful time. She had no idea how much worse things were about to get. The next few weeks were a nightmare that kept intensifying. Austin wasn't just threatening to leave, he was actually doing it. He started sleeping in the guest room permanently, talking to lawyers, looking at apartments. The worst part was how calm and determined he seemed about everything. Kendra tried everything to get him to reconsider. She cried, she apologized, she promised things would be different. But Austin had this look in his eyes like he was already gone, like he'd already grieved their marriage and moved on while she was still trying to salvage it. I've spent 6 months trying to be the husband you wanted, he told her when she begged for another chance. Someone who could show you affection without desire, who could love you without wanting you. And you know what I learned? That's not love. that's just going through motions. Kendra started obsessively checking his social media, looking for signs of the woman from the bar or any other woman. What she found was worse than infidelity. Austin had been reconnecting with old friends, pursuing hobbies she'd gradually discouraged, going to therapy. He was becoming this confident, happy version of himself she barely recognized. Her friends started asking questions when they noticed Austin's absence. When she tried explaining what happened, making herself sound like the victim, she could see them exchanging concerned glances. Sarah actually said, "Wait, you called him disgusting for being attracted to you, Kendra. That's really harsh." Even her own friends were taking his side. They remembered all her complaints about Austin being too affectionate, always getting worked up, and now they were looking at her like she was insane for destroying that. "Do you know how many women would kill to have a husband who's still that attracted to them after 3 years?" her friend Lisa asked. But the real devastating blow came when she found out through mutual friends that Austin was dating someone. Not the woman from the bar, someone new he'd met through his therapy group. A 26-year-old teacher who apparently thought Austin was amazing and wasn't shy about showing it. Kendra drove past the coffee shop where she heard they liked to meet. She saw them together. Austin looked happy, genuinely, deeply happy in a way she hadn't seen in months. He was smiling and laughing, and when this woman touched his arm while talking, he didn't pull away or seem uncomfortable. He leaned into it like he was starving for that kind of affection. That's when it truly hit her what she'd lost. Not just a husband, but a man who had loved her completely and openly, who had made her feel like the most desirable woman in the world. She'd had someone who couldn't keep his hands off her after 3 years of marriage, and she'd thrown it away because it was occasionally inconvenient. Kendra tried reaching out to Austin one last time, showing up at his new apartment with a long letter about how sorry she was and how much she'd learned, but Austin just looked tired when he saw her. "Kendra," he said gently, "I'm with someone now who makes me feel good about wanting her. Someone who tells me I'm attractive and initiates intimacy and doesn't make me feel like a creep for being turned on by my own girlfriend. I can't go back to feeling ashamed for desiring the person I'm with." "But I can change," she insisted. "I know I messed up. I can be better." Austin shook his head. "You had 6 months to change while I was begging you to work on us through my actions. Instead, you just got angry that I wasn't pursuing you anymore. Even now, you're not really sorry about what you said. You're just sorry about the consequences." And he was right. Even as she stood there crying and apologizing, part of her still thought he should have handled her criticism better, should have found a way to make her happy instead of shutting down completely. She still didn't fully understand that calling someone's love disgusting isn't something you just bounce back from. Where she is now. 6 months later, Kendra sits in her empty house. Austin took half the furniture when he moved out. She watches his new girlfriend post pictures of them together on social media, with captions like, "Can't believe this amazing man is mine," and "feeling so loved and appreciated," the kinds of captions Kendra never bothered with because she took Austin's devotion for granted. He looks incredible in every photo. Confident, happy, fulfilled, like he's finally with someone who appreciates what he has to offer instead of calling it disgusting. And Kendra is alone, wondering how she managed to destroy the best thing that ever happened to her because she was too selfish and ungrateful to recognize it while she had it. But even now, part of her thinks he should have fought harder for them. Part of her thinks he gave up too easily. And that's probably why she's sitting there alone, because she still doesn't really get it. She still doesn't understand that love isn't something you can criticize and control and expect to keep receiving. Some lessons, apparently, you only learn after it's too late to matter. This story breaks my heart because it's so preventable. Kendra had something precious, a partner who desired her deeply, who showed his love physically, who made her feel wanted every single day. And she destroyed it not because he did anything wrong, but because she couldn't appreciate the gift right in front of her. The tragic truth is that Kendra's biggest mistake wasn't saying those hurtful words in a moment of stress. It was everything that came before. She never reciprocated Austin's desire. She never made him feel wanted. She never initiated intimacy or gave him compliments or showed him that she found him attractive. She became comfortable being the object of his desire without ever desiring him back. And when his constant pursuit became inconvenient, she called it disgusting instead of having an honest conversation about what she needed. Austin didn't leave because of one comment. He left because that comment revealed the truth, that Kendra had been taking his love for granted all along, that she resented the very thing that made him a devoted partner. The lesson here isn't just for the Kendras of the world who don't appreciate what they have. It's for all of us to remember that relationships require reciprocity. If someone loves you openly and enthusiastically, you need to love them back the same way. You can't just receive affection and attention without giving it in return. And you can never, ever make someone feel ashamed for desiring you. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Mrs. Emma's channel so you never miss these powerful relationship stories that teach us how to love better, appreciate more, and never take the people who love us for granted. Thank you for listening, and remember, the grass isn't greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it. Don't wait until it's gone to realize what you had. Until next time, this is Emma, reminding you to cherish the love you have before it becomes the love you lost.